5, 4, 3. CGP Video Pictures presents Trek Tonight, Season 2. This week, Strange New Worlds. With your hosts, Christopher Pitcher, Leo Byrne-Janicek, and Keith Jacobson. Tonight's review, Hegemony. Now live from New York City, Wilmington, Delaware, and Everett, Washington, it's Trek Tonight. Hey there, Trekkers, and welcome to the season finale episode of Strange New Worlds and the season finale episode of Trek Tonight. We're ending our second season, which is very exciting. How are you guys?
I'm sort of bittersweet because I quite enjoyed this week's episode without going into details, but it may be a while before we get the next season, depending on how things play out here in Earth Prime, or whatever, pre-eugenics war Earth. So we'll see what happens. But
hopefully I'll still be among the living by then. Yeah.
We may all be enslaved by Khan sooner than later.
Well, maybe I can ingratiate myself to his regime for a little while.
Sure. Sure. I am choosing not to think about the fact that that it's going to be a while before we see more Strange New Worlds. Because if I do, I will. I enjoyed this episode. I'm glad I saw it. I'm glad for this opportunity to talk about it. But yes, it was good.
Well, it's funny because I think it might have been on Ready Room. By the way, I thought that Will Wheaton's Ready Room was especially good this week. So if you guys get a chance to check that out, it was all about the special effects and the puppets, and it was a really, really good show. But
neat.
I think somewhere in there, the showrunners were talking about how excited they were because they were able to do a continued episode. And I'm thinking, that's before you knew how long it was going to take you to get.
My impression is these are all recorded ahead of time.
Oh, I think they were. Yeah, I think they were
because
they have to be
people. Yeah,
because Wheaton's on strike now, so Wheaton's so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And
I
know he said they were coming back for Lower Decks, so they may have recorded all those. Like for a show like that, it's fairly easy because you could do it months in advance because they're probably done. These episodes are done in advance, so you can watch them. You can interview the actors and the producers and the special effects people and so on. So
I know he gets to see everything way before it comes out. So I mean, I've heard.
Yeah.
I've gotten that from his things he said, but at any rate, so tonight's episode was about we have some comments here. Hang on, before I get to that, we have Craig Lubin who says, "Greetings, may your Crate 32 Gorn protocol boxes be filled with monster killing fun."
Yes.
And Eric Hutz is here. He says, "To be continued in 2055.
Yeah.
But
hopefully
anyway,
I'll be in my Android body by then.
Yeah. Tonight's episode, the Captain Patel's pardon me, her ship is helping a colony that's outside of
Federation space.
You want to have a sip of something there? It's a human colony just outside of Federation space.
Yes,
they're independent because they're kind of, and they're reluctant to join the Federation officially.
Because they don't want to have a target on their back.
Although, frankly, it doesn't seem to be an issue for the Gorn, who attack fairly quickly, it seems.
Yes.
And Nurse Chapel has hitched a ride on the Cayuga to go to her fellowship with Dr. Corby. Yeah, Captain Battelle gave her a lift, and she was helping out with the inoculations on this planet, which is patterned on sort of mid-century America, Midwest sort of edition, and it's which is a good excuse to use that sort of a set, which it very much reminded me of the original series where they would have sets that had that sort of, because it was a backlot, and they were like, well, we can shoot here, and we don't have to build a whole new set. Apparently, this was the same set they used for the Amazon series Reacher, which which I've not seen. I saw the Tom Cruise movie, the first one, and apparently the actor who plays him in the Amazon series is much more the way he looks in the books. Like 6 foot plus, no neck, and
I've seen the Amazon Reacher. It's fantastic.
It's supposed to be good. It's supposed to be good. There's so many good things. It is hard to keep up with them all. But so they get attacked, and then the Enterprise they're able to get some sort of a call out. And the Enterprise leaps into action to aid them. And that's where our story begins. There is a little brief confab with Admiral April, who's like, listen, officially we can't help these people because they are outside of Federation. It's not like they invaded Federation territory. However, you're just there to observe and report back. And then you get that you get that bit too, where he's saying, listen, I know you're close with Marie, but I want to make sure that's not going to interfere with your judgment. Which he assures them it will not. Although it not? He assures it will the Admiral it will not. Although, let's face it, it absolutely will. Well, and I gotta say, I want to give props where props are due. Who said last week that this episode was going to be about Battelle and her ship being in a conflict with the Gorn? That was Keith. That was Keith. She is
technically. Well, I'm not going to. That might be spoilers, but she's not dead yet.
If you're watching this, you're down for spoilers, or Oh yeah. I didn't even do the spoiler alert this time. But she is in a wee bit of trouble to also make a nod to something that happens later in the episode. But we finally, there she is looking at that. There she is looking up at the sky as the Gorn attack. Hey, I've got a quick question for you guys. Okay. Sure. Mm-hmm. So, when she's talking to, she's talking to Pike and her communications go out. She loses the call and she goes and talks to one of her crew and says, what's going on with comms? And then they see a shuttle coming in hot and fast. Yes. That has to be Scotty, right?
Yeah. By the way, you dropped the big reveal when Scotty's in this show. All right, then. I wasn't going to start screaming the mic until then, but, you said the S word, so fuck it. Scotty! Scotty, I had no idea that was coming.
No, my hat's off that they did not blow that. I'm so delighted.
That is not Scotty.
No, and that's not either. Scotty. Where is he? He's in here somewhere.
Very talented Martin Quinn, a Scottish actor.
That's Scotty.
There he is. Good pick, I thought.
Oh, God. I saw that red shirt, and I heard that fucking accent. I went, Scotty?
Yeah.
Scotty?
I was like, it took me a moment. I was like, wait a minute. Red shirt, Scottish accent? I'm like, are they doing it? And they are.
And they are.
Yep. I thought it was great.
He's a lieutenant junior grade.
Yep.
He already is earning his future moniker as a miracle worker because he escaped. He was on another ship. It was monitoring solar activity one system over. He was able to rejigger the transponder to make him look like a Gorn ship, so he was able to escape. Um, yeah, there he is.
He's got a good look. I got to tell you, I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does look.
He
I mean,
has
it's
roughly
always
roughly the same shape as face as Doohan does.
it is tricky, casting these legacy characters, because beam me up, Scotty. Exactly.
Craig says, yeah.
But I thought they did an excellent job. I think he was perfectly cast. He has he's not exactly the Scotty remember, but because he's he's like a little. I wouldn't say he's cocky, but he's like, he's still a junior officer, so he's still trying to.
One of my favorite moments, and I know we're sort of skipping ahead a little bit, but
yes,
was he's standing there and he introduces himself, and then Pike introduces himself and his crew. Yeah. And did you notice that he goes from sort of slouched and casual to the minute he's talking to the captain, he's all of a sudden at attention.
Yeah.
A lot of lieutenants. Yeah.
A lot of lieutenants.
A lot of lieutenants. I loved how you said lieutenant in there too. Even
I do.
This might answer your question. A lieutenant is a commissioned officer ranked
quiet, Alexa. Alexa.
Thank you, Alexa.
But I do like the. I'm a fan of the pronunciation lieutenant. I don't know why. I'm a slight Anglophile, although not everything about Britain, but a lot of British stuff I'm quite a fan of. And I do like saying lieutenant. I don't know why.
Yeah, that's cool. Craig has an interesting little fun fact here.
Sure.
He says he was serving on the Star Diver, modeled after the solar exploration vessel Sundiver from the 1980 David Brin novel of the same name.
Yes, that was David Brin's first uplift novel, which it's not as good as Star Tide Rising, but it's a good read. So, but yeah, no, I'm
back in the
quite
1980s,
enjoying New Scotty. Yes,
back in the 1980s, when FASA Star Trek was a thing, the RPG was a thing. I actually did write an adventure based on that book.
Oh, cool!
Really?
Yeah, I have. That's long since lost and disappeared, and I don't even remember what the plot was, other than the fact that I thought it was such a cool idea that I thought, So anyway, but
yeah, there was a ship that was able to go into the sun to do scientific research, but there was also a murder in the book, so it was a bit of a murder mystery as well. But I do like him. I'm a big fan. His name is Martin Quinn, is the actor who's played him. He's a younger fellow. I don't know exactly. Let's see if I can find out how old he is. He was born. I'm looking at IMDb. He was born in 1994, so he's almost 30 now, right? Almost 30.
Is he related to Charlie Quinn?
It does not say Charlie Quinn.
That's an inside joke, folks.
Yes.
I thought it was cool. I thought it was exciting. We had, you had your fun with the Gorn, which is always interesting. I'm not sure. I guess they're just going with this. Like, the Gorn everybody knows who the Gorn is.
Listen, it does break somewhat with canon, but I'll be honest.
Yeah.
I'm entirely okay with that, because otherwise then it's like you're cutting yourself off. You don't get to have this cool story.
Right.
So we've finally, because now the Gorn have also put a demarcation line between the Enterprise and the planet.
Now that's a very interesting point, because so far the Gorn have just been spacefaring monsters that just show up like aliens, like in the movie Aliens, and wreak havoc. But they actually contact Starfleet, and they send them that image of, okay, here's your side, this is our side. And it's interesting because you get the impression from something that gets dropped early in the season with Admiral April. Is the Federation, have they reached out somehow? Are they trying to talk to them? They're doing something at a very high level with the Gorn. And It's just
Well,
interesting.
Since seeing this episode, I've actually been thinking a little bit about the Gorn and what we know about them in this version of Star Trek.
Yeah.
And mostly what we know of the Gorn in this Star Trek is based on what La'an has told us and what we saw in the episode where Hammer died. You know, and the I can't remember the name of the episode, but the submarine episode where a bunch of ships are dropping depth charges on the Enterprise as the Enterprise is hiding in a. Those three things are what we know mostly about the Gorn. And specifically thinking of La'an, I'm wondering how reliable a narrator La'an is regarding what the Gorn are. Yes, she has lots of experience with them, but she was a child and full of a child's fears, and I mean, she makes them out to be totally mindless monsters, yet they are able to build starships.
Well, you know, it's interesting because Pike, when he's talking with Admiral April in the beginning of the episode, and he said, well, Pike, you know, April says, we really don't know very much about the Gorn. Pike is like, I think I know enough. They're monsters. He's, you know, that's what you call somebody if you don't understand them. He says sometimes monsters are just monsters. So he, it is interesting to see, because usually, although Pike does later in the episode say, you know, maybe there's a way we can find some sort of common ground, some accord with them. You know, is because he says hope is a choice. And Lon, you know, says, well, you always say that. She says, well, maybe I'm just trying to convince myself. Because they've snuck onto the planet by falling through the atmosphere. They want my own nitrogen bomb.
For you,
yeah,
Craig,
it is
no.
a little weird. I'm not sure
for,
what.
Not for Craig. I think that's right up Craig's. You go, Craig. you be you, Craig. Never change.
It may not be okay. It's not weird, but it is unsettling.
Yeah, disturbing.
I'm not sure what sort of animal issues you're having up on the mountain there. If the Gorn are showing up, you should speak to the authorities. Anyway, so they decide, since the Gorn are not interested in the debris of the Cayuga, what they're going to do is they're going to take a shuttle and like strap a whole bunch of like garbage to it and match speed with the debris, and then she's going to do her dive, which we've been waiting for since the trailer.
And actually, it's really funny when I think about that, because we did an episode before it started where we sat and analyzed almost frame by frame that original trailer. And we were all sitting there like, well, what's wrong with that shuttlecraft? Why is there all that junk all over it and stuff? It's just funny, the things that we didn't get at the moment that became very clear in this episode. But
and there's no way to know what was going on. But everybody else, Pike especially, seemed to be really uncomfortable with this sort of free fall. I mean, I can't imagine I would be any different. But
she's spinning. It's not just that it's free fall; it was rotating and like this, this like spiral thing going on. I was like, that's why. I mean, he looked like he was about ready to puke.
It did,
you know?
And she's like, "Hey, Cap, I told you." Yeah, he goes, "Hey, Cap, I thought you were test pilots." I was. But she pulls it out, and she's like, "I did this 100 times in the war." You know, and she is grinning ear to ear. She's having a
she's loving it. Yeah, it was funny though when he says you're going to have to pilot the shuttle, and she kind of looks at him like, and she goes, "Well, you've been bugging me all year to go on a landing party." And she goes, "Yeah, why did I do that?"
Yeah. But they land on the planet, and they discover the Gorn have set up this machine which disrupts communications, transporters, and sensors.
Right.
So it's like a blackout, you know, so people can't evacuate, they can't communicate. Very easy to round them up as a result. And they're in the middle of the town, and a juvenile Gorn comes in, and they all hide, and then Lon shoots it with the new phasers they were given. That apparently this was after the previous things where Gorns didn't show up on sensors or tricorders, and their weapons weren't as effective against them. So they have like some souped up phase. They also have the nitrogen bomb because they're cold-blooded species, particularly effective. And they're hiding out like in a barber shop, and they're trying to figure out what's going on.
Well, let me cut you off there for a second.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. So there's a moment at that point, and I want to get your guys' take on this, where they're speculating because they notice that the Gorn are younglings, first of all.
Yes.
That are running all over the place, and they're working together, not fighting each other. Where it used to be, what they knew of them early on was that they were all in competition with each other for food. So, what do you think that was about?
So I think partly what that's about, and this gets back to what I mentioned earlier, because it was when La'an was obviously confused about why the younglings were cooperating, that I came to my thought, I wonder if La'an actually knows as much about the Gorn as she thinks she does. Right. Because and then we get some other, and that's when I got the idea that maybe La'an, she knows a lot about the Gorn, but she could still be surprised by them. I suspect that the fighting amongst each other might have to do when there is I don't know. I'm just thinking that, I mean, she even said in that episode where Hummer died that the younglings are intelligent still.
Right.
So
and it's interesting because it makes me wonder, since the Gorn took it upon themselves to actually communicate with the Federation and to create a line that says this is ours and this is yours, that there's something else going on here besides them just being on a feeding frenzy. Whether it's about territory, whether it's about something else, because I mean, it's a different kind of play for them from what we've seen. Yeah,
it is true. I mean, this planet might have strategic value to them that we're not aware of. Also, I will say this. I'm going to get this out of the way and then move on, because it's like, so they put a demarcation line, but planets orbit and they could go in and out of that. It's like, it's not like everything. Everything from the river to the mountains is ours.
Right.
It's like that planet is moving unless. Craig, back me up. I don't know. But as a plot device, it's fine. So they we have to stay on our side of this line.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think it was supposed to give you that same feeling of neutral zone kind of thing. Yeah. But you're right. The planet does rotate in orbit and changes position throughout the year. So yes. It's not always going to be.
As does the star. I mean, the galaxy is rotating. So, but for the purposes of this story, it's fine. It's fine.
It's fine.
I mean,
to yourself, it's just a show. You should
really hand wave.
Exactly, because otherwise, listen, none of this makes sense once we start pulling on threads. But but the rest of the crew, and we get to see number one in command, which is kind of cool because we don't really get to see her do that much. And she's a pretty good first officer and commander because Christine had beamed up to the Cayuga before it was attacked. And like the saucer looked like the Cayuga was the same class ship as the Enterprise. It was a Constitution class, at least from that shot we saw in the beginning.
Yeah, it's very weird because I was trying to find, I do this. I try to find images published by Paramount and so on and so forth. And I could not find a single image. I had a very hard time finding one of Scotty, which makes me think that they were really trying to keep that under wraps. Yeah. And the other thing I couldn't find was any images of the destroyed Cayuga. I just couldn't find them. Or any of the stuff between Spock and Chapel on board fighting the Gorn. It was really weird.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that's because they were really trying to clamp down on this episode or what, but
I think maybe they would. I mean, I was delighted that Scotty showed up and I had no idea.
Same here. That's
I think it's too easy to know too much about something going in. Sometimes you just want to be like, "Oh, cool, that was neat."
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so they're all trying to figure out like, and you could tell he's like telling number one how he's like he feels like he needs to apologize to Christine. Things he left things badly with her, and now he's worried that she's dead because they can't scan for any life signs on the Cayuga, so
Right.
they don't know. And they say, well, it looks like sickbay was a kind of have because there's this huge like almost a bite, if you will, out of the
Right.
saucer section. And
Yeah,
they're like,
it reminded me of one of those illustrations that they used to do where it's like, here's a cross section of the Enterprise, and
exactly,
you see like, all the
Yes,
decks and
yes.
shit in there. Yeah. Yeah.
so he's feeling like, oh my gosh, it could be. It's very likely she's dead. Although he's still holding out some hope. And Uhura and Pelia, Uhura approaches Pelia because I think I've got an idea, crazy idea, and she's like, it's like, well, maybe not. She's like, don't sugarcoat it. I love crazy ideas.
Yeah.
And what they come up with is, well, they cannot use sensors to find the device that's causing all these problems. They can extrapolate the area where it's in because there's, I think it's something about like an energy, like reflection or some bit of business like that, and then it's coming from an area that there are no structures there. There was nothing on the colony in that area. So
Right.
the idea is to push the saucer section of the Cayuga in a way that looks like it's decaying orbit and aim it right towards that machine. And the idea is they will put retro rockets on it to do that, so they
Right.
can guide it like as it's falling into the atmosphere. And Spock
Okay.
says,
Well, now hang on, Leo.
Yeah.
This is one thing I wanted to talk a little bit about
Yeah.
because I have a lot of fun with the character of Pelia, but
yeah,
I thought it was a very interesting moment where, because this is somebody that has lived for thousands of years. I mean, or
Yeah.
for a really long time. Okay. And when Uhura first approaches her, I thought it was very interesting because she really looked terrified.
yeah,
Like she's trying to, Uhura's coming up to her talking. And, Pelia's always sort of got this,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say flippant, but she's got this, goofy sense of humor about everything she says. But in that moment, I thought that the character really looked terrified and almost didn't have the time or the patience to talk to Uhura right away because she was worried about getting the deflector screens up.
yeah.
And I thought that was really interesting. I don't know what you guys thought of that, but it was a little more dimension into that character than I've seen so far.
It is. I mean, I like Pelia more than you do, but
No, I know.
We don't get to see her do as much engineering stuff as we would like to. And when they talk about the idea, number one says something when they're pitching the idea. She's like, if you'd said something like that in my class, I would have given you an A+. So she's still sort of needling her about all that. But Spock says, I'm the only person who can do it, presumably because he's Vulcan,
That's my next question to you guys. Why? Why is Spock as a Vulcan the only one that can do it? Is it because of his strength? What's the reason? They don't really explain it, and I was curious.
They don't explain it. I think it's partially because of his scientific mind in placing it, being able to place it correctly.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
They don't explain it, but that's my presumption. Because I think anybody
could, as Kirk would say later on, or as McCoy actually says, he trusts your guesses more than other people's facts.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the point. It was that he could do the calculations in his head. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's it. Because I was wondering about that too, and I thought it had something to do with Spock's shuttle piloting ability. But now that you said that, I agree.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that. I think it's that Spock is like can science the shit out of things. So
yeah.
By the way, Craig gives you props, Leo.
Oh yeah.
The physics gods smile on you, Leo Genesek. You're correct. A problem of two-dimensional thinking.
Exactly. It's true. It's sort of, it must be odd to be able to have demarcation lines of territory in deep space because I mean, I guess if if they're like on the path of stars, it'd be like from this star to this star, that line, that's our border, and then this star, But
Well, I think on a larger scale, it's
you could do it
probably easier to
easy.
do than on a system-wide scale like that. 'Cause
Yeah,
you're
I
right,
think it.
come around.
So
Like on a system wide scale, you could probably say something like whatever we never did find out where this planet was in relation to the other planets in the system, but you can say everything outside its orbit is your territory. Everything from its orbit inside is ours.
yeah,
that would
would
work.
That would work, but so he has to go over there. But meanwhile, Christine Chapel, everybody's favorite nurse, has woken up on the Cayuga, which is in terrible, terrible shape and
Right.
losing life support. And apparently, she's the only survivor because the place is there's just bodies all over the place. And she rejiggers. She gets like an hour's worth of life support, and she's trying to figure out what to do. And she looks at him. She sees the Enterprise, and she even sees Spock coming by, like floating by her, because he goes in an EV suit with pulling a large container with these retro rockets in it, and she's like banging on the thing, which is sort of funny because it's a very human sort of impulse because the sound will not travel into space.
I did exactly
I'm sure she
what I
rationally
thought
knows
of
that.
Yeah.
I'm sure she rationally knows that, but like your impulse is somebody's walking by your window, you're like boom, 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 boom,
Yeah.
So the flashlight, she's trying to signal with the flashlight, but it's dying.
Yeah.
And so she decides, like, I'm going to put on an EV suit.
Right.
And
I thought she goes out trying to figure out how to get out to Spock, and I thought it was cool. That scene between the three of them, the Gorn and Spock and Chapel on the blown out bridge of the Cayuga. That was a great scene. And again, if you watch Ready Room, they spent a lot of time talking about how they did that scene. And I'm impressed. One thing, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I'm impressed with the high level of practical effects with the monsters.
I agree. Yeah.
Because it's not just shoving a lot of CG in your face. I mean, they do they aid their images with some computer elements, but I think it's really neat. They go back to practical effects with animatronic and puppets. I think it's fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Gorn, the mature Gorn, we finally see like a fully grown Gorn. He's in an EV suit,
right?
And he's the guy who was in it is a big, strong, strapping dude that they cast, and I think he was a stunt guy as well. And they have to put him in this thing, and they're all on cables because it's all zero G. They're floating and they're being thrown around. And he's in there for like 8 hours, wearing this suit, which apparently weighs about 100 pounds.
Keith's being attacked by a Gorn right now.
I am. That's right.
The big tail.
The
Gorn tail.
You didn't know that their tail was furry, did you? Which you could not tell. You could not tell because the tail in the show was inside a metal suit. So
there was definitely an Aliens vibe. Agreed. Christopher Pitcher, the Bridge Gorn's fight scene was great, except for the slow-mo in a weightless environment. That's not a thing. Well, I thought about that too, but it also it's a suggestion of zero G that I think if they were moving too fast, it would be also.
I think you might be right there, Leo. Yeah, because we're used to seeing images of our astronauts hopping around and floating in zero G, and they all do look like they're sort of like, hey, how are you? I mean, when they're talking, you can tell they're not obviously in slow motion, but all that floating around. I think it's more because they're being cautious, and so they're not jumping around. But
because I'm sure you have to be like, otherwise you'd be like, boy, I really shouldn't have jumped that hard because now I'm just floating at the spaceship. What just a side note is the EV suits, and I think we've seen these before, but there's sort of a panel on the chest that is very reminiscent of the shape from the old original series spacesuits, which had those sort of beehive,
Right.
helmets, which were much easier to see the faces of the actors. These
Right.
have like hard, like these look more like actual spacesuits, but it was
Right.
like a nice, not that sort of asymmetrical sort of plate on the chest.
Well, you know
Which
what else I liked is that and let me see, I think I can give you some examples of this because I know we see uh right, here you go. So the body armor
yes,
is in the color of their tunic.
yeah,
So has red breastplates. You can't really see it here, but his are gold.
yeah.
And it's just interesting. I like that. I thought that was kind of cool.
These
Um,
are modified versions of the
oh yeah, I
tactical
don't have
suits we
anything
saw in
else.
Discovery first.
Yeah,
Um, but they've updated them to give them like different colors because apparently Starfleet's now adopted the tricolor uniform
right.
standard and abandoned the sort of asymmetrical jumpsuit designed by a Frenchman. I'm
Right.
guessing. I don't know. It very much looked like it was like a little hot couture,
Yeah.
because it was like this sort of like asymmetrical, which I like. I didn't mind like the slight asymmetrical TOS universe we saw in Discovery second season when Pike first shows up. I'm like, it's a little off. It's like a little asymmetrical, but like that's okay. I don't,
Yeah.
you know, um, but
Yeah, I like what they settled on. I like what they settled
Yeah.
on. It's close enough to the original series while still having its own identity.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I think so
I
too.
like it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but
I like it a
yeah,
lot better than the Discovery costumes.
yeah.
With the big
I mean,
silver
I'm
stripes
not a
down the
huge,
side.
I'm not a huge fan of the Discovery costumes just because I think they were trying to bridge the gap between the Enterprise
Oh, I agree.
jumpsuits, which were much more sort of like submarine uniforms,
Yes.
and
They
the
were more like
Enterprise,
military uniforms. Yeah.
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 Uh,
Um,
these were like they weren't terrible, but like I said, it just the asymmetrical. It was interesting, but I wasn't quite sure what the purpose for it was, other than it
right.
being interesting.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but it is what it is. Now we've moved on to this, uh, you know, more TOS inspired
Mm.
Right.
uniforms, which I'm a fan of.
Well,
I
yeah.
I so want my own set of my own Strange New World tunic. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would like uh, I think it's called is it Hero Within. There's a website that makes, and I saw some of the people who did it at New York Comic Con last year. I think it was last year. Yeah, it
Okay.
was last year. And they make jackets like the jackets they wear on Stranger Worlds. They're not leather, but they're made out of like a vinyl.
Right.
Um, and they're which hence makes them a lot more reasonable price wise.
Oh, sure.
Because
Sure.
I'm sure a leather is the jackets on sci-fi jackets are always like the best. Like
Oh, yeah.
the Strange New Worlds jackets or kick ass.
Yep.
Star Wars has tons of great jackets. And then
Yeah.
there's the jackets we saw in Picard.
Yep.
Those sort of more casual, the motorcycle jacket versions of the uniforms, which I quite liked.
Yeah.
So, but I've lost my time. I'm just talking about now. This has become the fashion segment of this.
Yeah.
Anyway,
The fact. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. No, I agree with you. But where we got to that was because I was pointing out that the body armor
yeah.
imitated the color of their tunic, which I thought was cool.
I like that.
That's
I
how we
also,
got off on that whole tangent.
I will. I
Yeah.
will also say, and this is not the first time we've heard this, is the bit with the Gorn on the Cayuga very much had an alien, like
Yeah.
the Ridley Scott Alien,
Yeah.
or James Cameron Aliens feel to it, because it's got that long tail of that sort of segmented armor on it, which I assume is
Yeah.
not the way it looks in real life. That's just more either both ornamental and perhaps practical for just whipping people around.
So that was interesting. Let's jump back just a tiny bit, talking
All
about
right,
Gorn
let's.
on the ship, and so she walks down the corridor without her
Yeah.
helmet on, thinking that it's Spock messing around because she
Yeah.
hears the computer saying something about inputting command codes.
Command code is correct.
Yeah. And then she sees hanging out of what looks like a Jeffries tube, one of these full-grown Gorn. And I thought, number one, is the Gorn like fucking around with the equipment on purpose? Like, is he trying to figure something out, and that's why he keeps trying to enter something, and it will tell him the command code wasn't right?
I think he is.
Yeah, and which is interesting because he's clearly investigating their level of technology. Then I guess. See, I think there's going on.
I mean, that's the thing. Is like we haven't seen Gorn in a conversational setting, which doesn't seem to be their their bailiwick. But they are intelligent. Yes.
Yeah.
Conversation pit with the Gorn. But the idea, it does reinforce the idea that they are an intelligent species.
Yeah.
They have interstellar. They have warp. They're a warp drive capable civilization. They built spaceships. They have transporters. They have all this stuff. So,
they
can't just be monsters. Is my point.
Yeah.
What were you going to say, Keith? You had something.
I think that what we're doing. I think what we're. Let me rephrase that because I'm totally involved in this. I totally have I think what they are doing is I think they are setting up that while the Gorn are terrifying and dangerous, that they are not quite the monsters that we have been led to believe they are with our previous interactions for them.
Right.
They are shown to be intelligent. The fact that even the younglings are shown to be, the younglings are apparently working together. We've got this Gorn on the Cayuga investigating, trying to hack it. Admittedly, he's doing a crappy job of hacking. He's apparently just doing a brute force search, and he'd be much better off having some sort of computer help him with that. But more power to him if he wants to keep entering codes one at a time like that, and let them, he was probably still doing there right to the moment the ship crashed down into the planet.
Yeah. And the other thing is, so she sees him doing that, and then she looks over at another Jeffries tube, which looks like it's all burnt out and stuff. Is that how she gets to the bridge?
I think so. I think that's how she gets
it looked really frosted over to my mind.
I thought frosted over as well.
So that maybe she took that
perhaps from exposure to the
but the fight scene on the bridge is great because also Spock has put his last retro rocket on the bridge, and he's playing around with his little wrist pad or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And then he sees the reflection of the Gorn. The Gorn is sort of coming from above, which seems to be their move is to crawl out of a hole in the ceiling. And he sees the reflection. He turns around. And he pulls out his phaser. He's got one of the special Gorn phasers. Gets knocked out of his hand, and then he sees Christine come on the bridge. And the Gorn is, Spock is strong. Vulcans are very strong, but this Gorn just like towers over him, and he's got him crushing his throat. Is holding him up by his neck. And it looked like he was going to crush his faceplate. But
that was interesting because, correct me if I'm wrong, I think he wraps his tail around his throat first.
Oh yeah, he does do that.
Yeah, and then he starts to go to crush the faceplate. Yeah. It was interesting. Yeah, it was cool to see an adult Gorn in combat like that. I thought.
Yes, it is, and it's like about 7 feet. Easily 7 feet tall.
And as we know from the Ready Room, the costume's like 100 pounds.
It is.
That's why the guy had to be so big and strong that he had to play the Gorn. Because he had to be able to shoulder like 100 pounds worth of mechanical shit. Because his face was in the throat.
Yeah.
And as from what I understand from that interview, they wanted him to really have full visibility. So whatever they did with the meshing on the throat, he was able to really see all around. But the whole head was an animatronic radio controlled thing.
Yeah.
So he had to shoulder that aluminum frame that held the all the puppetry stuff in the top.
Plus the motor and the battery and all that.
Yeah.
So and it was dimly lit enough because it was like a Starship minus on like running on emergency power, so there wasn't like it wasn't brightly lit, so that sort of forgives a few sins there. I wasn't like trying to look for his face, although now I don't need to see how the sausage is made, but yeah, it was a very cool because Chapel goes and she grabs the phaser, which is like tumbling across almost off this huge gap in the bridge, and she grabs it and she locks her magnetic boots and she shoots the Gorn,
right,
who releases Spock. Now Spock grabs a piece of metal like off like a strut, pulls it off, which I'm like, you just in case you forgot, Vulcans are strong as fuck. We've seen Spock in the original series like take a phaser and go like, and bend it like that. Takes it, cracks it through the faceplate of the Gorn, who starts venting atmosphere like immediately, and then just starts tumbling out of the bridge. He's that was it. But and they make their escape. And what's kind of nice is the retro rockets get like activated and they start moving, and they're sort of like floating in space, and they just sort of take each other's hands.
Yeah,
which I thought was a very nice moment.
As they watch it go down and burn to the atmosphere. Yeah.
And now going back down to the planet.
Here's those suits, by the way.
Yeah,
this is when they get back on the Enterprise.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, hers is white.
Yep, and he's got
his is blue.
Panel.
Yeah.
Interesting. Huh.
So
they carried that through to the EV suits too. That's cool.
Yeah, I like that. But let's go back to because we've discussed Scotty's appearance.
Yes.
And he'd rigged up a thing they would send out a signal that would appear to be like human readings, because they were like, oh, there's some human readings down the street. They go in there and they was like, well, it's just this weird box. And then these shields go up and Scotty comes out. He's like, oh, you're not Gorn, and they have their whole exchange, and he finds out it was the captain. He starts standing a little straighter. He's like, it's a lot of lieutenants, as he says. And they're like, are there any other human survivors? He says, oh, follow me. And there's like a diner or something where they've all holed up. And Captain Battelle, in case you were wondering what happened, she survived. She's there. She's a little beat up, but she's alive. And she's kind of upset that Pike has come. She's like, you're risking your ship and yourself. And he said, well, it was my call. And they're like, it's
she's got to know. I mean, isn't she the one who called him a Boy Scout?
Yeah.
Or was that Una?
I think Una called him a Boy Scout.
I think Una called him. Well, even so, she knows who she's dating. She's like there's any way he's not coming.
But she also, realizes the situation. So, but I think it's like she's probably delighted to see him and horrified at the same time because, she would prefer him not to be in danger. And so we find out that Scotty had jury-rigged. He tells this whole story. And later on, when everybody's resting, Pike gets up and he's like, starts to like creep over and like unbarricade the door to get out. And, she's like, where the hell do you think you're going? And he's like, well, listen, I think if I can get a Mr. Scott's shuttle, then we can use the thing and we can put it on our shuttle and then we can get out of here. She's like, it's not enough. We can't get out of it. Like, a shuttle can't take everybody out.
Right.
And then Scotty interrupts. He's like, I'm sorry, you just happened to have your secret conversation next to the place I was sleeping. And he offers to go with them, although he's like, I'm terrified, but I'll go.
I love that moment because
he
says, well, do you want to come? And the idea that Scotty admits, well, I'm terrified, but
you'll never be able to do without me. So and they go off to find his shuttle, which they do, and he's got to dismantle this thing, which he'd done partially from this was it Sundiver,
Stardiver.
Stardiver, like it was. He says, well, we should be able to fix it, and then a juvenile Gorn shows up in the shuttle, and you could tell they're intelligent because Pike is like reaching for his gun, and it's like, he's like, all right, keep my hands up, and it sort of sniffs Battelle, and then it just like fucks off, and she's like, and he's like, what's going on? He's like, it's nothing. Let's just keep going. And she finally admits that she was infected, like she has some Gorn eggs in her arm, and she's like, listen, this is what we're going to do. We're going to put it on your shuttle. I'm going to fly it into the Gorn machine. Everybody can beam up. It'll be fine. He says, listen, I'm not giving up on you, and the whole thing. And they're arguing as who's going to be the hero. And then Scotty says, you might want to take, grab a hold of something. And then we see the decimated saucer section of the Cayuga smash into the machine.
Right.
Solving that particular problem. And then they can contact.
Yeah, that's interesting because you've got Pike and his landing party out of communication with the bridge. So the bridge is coming up with their solution between Uhura and Apelia, and then you've got Scotty working with them to try to come up with their solution down on a planet. It's just interesting. It was nicely done that way, I thought.
And it was a nice overlap because there was going to be like who's going to be the big hero, and they're like, oh, I guess somebody else. But they beam right up, and there's a beam us right to sickbay, and they also get Spock and Chapel, and they're like, he says, "Miss Chapel, we need you in sickbay," and he's basically like says, "Listen, do what you can. Like, I'm not giving up on you." She says, "Well, I'll put her in stasis."
Right.
But Battelle says, "There's like, if these things start to hatch, just end me. I want you to promise to do that."
Right.
Which Christine agrees to, but she's like, "I'm not giving up yet either."
Right.
So they're like, "All right, let's start beaming everybody off the planet," and you see everybody sort of getting together and standing together, and then they're beamed up, and it's a weird green transporter signal.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was like, I didn't really notice that the first time. I watched it twice.
I didn't either. Yeah.
And we find out that the Gorn have beamed everybody, all the humans and Federation personnel and colonists off this planet. And they're on one of the Gorn ships, and a bunch of more Gorn ships show up. They're battering the Enterprise, and Starfleet is ordering them to retreat. And Pike, we've never seen Pike this way before. He's sort of, because people are like, well, but our people are still on that ship. Because they figure out what's going on. And it's like, what is he going to do?
Captain orders.
Yeah. And he looks, for the first time we've ever seen him look like, indecision isn't quite the word. He just looks stunned by what terrible thing do I risk this, like everybody on this ship to do this? Do I leave them behind?
Well, and I don't know why, but it didn't occur to me until my second viewing. Now, I've got to say, my first viewing, I didn't watch it at 3 a.m. like I normally did, because I thought to myself, that's really dumb. It screws up my whole day. I have to take a nap in the middle of the day. Then I'm doing the show at 9, and I'm like half asleep. And so it's like, that's stupid. So I ended up watching it in the morning, but I kept getting interrupted because the morning in my house is crazy. You've got children, and everybody wants their coffee, and it's just crazy. So I was watching it in little chunks. So until I went back for my second viewing, which I did in private, it didn't really occur to me that it wasn't just the colonists that got abducted, but he lost Leon, he lost Ortega, and he lost Mabenga.
Yeah.
And I'm like, holy shit. Yeah, that's not just, I feel bad we have these colonists that got taken. It's like, that's half his crew, his
crew. And we haven't mentioned yet, but Sam Kirk is also on that planet.
That's true.
Who volunteered for the mission. Like, they're all basically like, I'll go,
Right.
Everybody's willing because,
I thought it was cool that Sam Kirk said he wanted to go. I really
yeah, he
did.
says I didn't react well last time we, you know, encountered the Gorn, and I'd like to readjust that. I'd like to make like more study. And Lance says with a phaser, he says, well, you know, how else are we going to know how to kill them? Which was kind of a
Eric Hutt says deer in the headlights.
Yeah, this was Pike definitely looked stymied for a clear choice.
Deer in the to be continued.
Yes. And it's a to be continued.
It's a to be continued.
Which were we not in the middle of a actors and writers strike, we might be, we would probably be seeing this in about a year.
Well, yeah, I mean, we'd be imagining, okay, like we did back in the day with, like you brought up, Best of Both Worlds.
Yeah,
was a big cliffhanger.
Yeah,
for Next Generation with Picard, being Borgified and stuff. So, but you just figure, well, you get through the summer, and then in the fall you'll see what happens. But I like that now.
So I hope I hope they resolve the strike soon, but in a way that is beneficial to everybody.
Right.
So, knock on.
But especially in a way that's beneficial to me, that I get to see Strange New Worlds sooner than later.
Well,
anyway. But at any rate, any last thoughts on the season finale? And because we are 56 minutes after the hour, so
the only thing I want to point out that we haven't pointed out yet is that Pelia and Scotty know each other.
Yes.
And Pelia had a very interesting line that you were one of my best students. You were one of my best students who got the worst grades. I was just kind of curious about how that worked, because that made me think back to the Hammer, where she's talking to Uhura about Hammer.
Right.
And we hear first Pelia says, Hammer, yes, he was one of my best students. Actually, no, that's a lie. I just said that because he's dead. He was an okay student. So
Right. Yeah. Well, it's really funny because she really sounds like she must have been quite the taskmaster. It doesn't sound like anybody has really come up to, as a student, really came up to where she wanted them to be.
Yeah, as Keith, as I'm sure Keith said, I just had to step away for a moment and check the lithium influx chamber. She's my best student with the worst grades. Now there may be my impression that gives me the impression that Scotty has always been a bit of a sort of improviser, thinking outside the box sort of engineer. Like he's not like, well, let's do this. We do this, this, and this. That's what it said in the manual. He's kind of like, what if we bypass this? That should boost that.
Right.
And we really don't need this thing. And he, pulls it out.
That's my impression of what's going on too. That even back in Starfleet Academy, Scotty was always just jury rigging stuff and.
Which is great. You're right. Keith you said something earlier offline. This was during the day when we were first waking up, having seen the show, and you were like, you want to see how that relationship plays out.
I really do. I want to know more about what I'm assuming, like Leo said, I'm assuming that Pelia got frustrated with Scotty's outside the box thinking, as you said, Leo, which actually, by the way, gets back to what you've been bugging her about with you, Chris. You have been hard on Pelia. Because Pelia has seemed like such a free spirit, this kind of bouncing in and out but it sounds like she's really a by the book engineer.
Well, it sounds to me like was a very tough professor. Craig Lubin here says that there is always one engineering professor who grades more severely than a Romulan security officer.
Yes.
So
Professor Tal Shiar.
Yeah.
But yes,
Yeah.
But it's interesting. It also goes to the idea that sometimes we see a quality in ourselves in somebody else, and it might rather than like be like, oh, they're just like me. They'd be like, what the hell is this little shit thing, you know?
Right.
And
Well, and that could be your answer right there, because you brought
Yeah.
up what I was saying
yeah,
about Pelia seeming like a free spirit
Yeah.
and being imaginative, and perhaps maybe that's the thing. Just like Leo
could be.
said,
yeah,
Perhaps.
she sees that in him and finds it annoying for
You
some
know.
reason. But I don't know,
But
Just like you find it annoying.
because they're that much alike in some way. I don't know.
and I did like because he looked kind of like, oh, it's her, you know?
Yeah, that was a great look.
Yeah.
And he's standing there with that gizmo in his hand. It's all
Yeah.
like up in the air,
Yeah,
and he's like, oh, because he says Scotty.
yeah. So my prediction for next season, which whenever it happens,
Yeah.
is that we Scotty might become like a reoccurring character, not necessarily a main, above the line sort of regular, but in the way that Pelia is. Like he might show up in episodes that Pelia are not there, as become one of the engineering crew, maybe, or maybe they might. It like Kirk has shown up periodically, but he's not on the ship. Although it'd be much easier to fold Scotty into the engineering crew. It is funny because sometimes we see these scenes in engineering and there's barely anybody in there. Not all the time.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
Yeah.
They've been,
Whereas when you think about Next Generation, there was always like 5 or 6 guys wandering around in there.
Yeah, and TOS too. There's always a bunch of red shirts
Yeah.
in there, like standing at consoles and doing busy business.
They need more extras. They need more extras in engineering.
We've seen it. I think at the beginning when she was doing the very first episode where she's doing her inspection, there were a bunch of engineers in there like doing stuff, but and partially because last week's was a musical, they did a couple of those musical numbers in there, and while it could have been fun to have a bunch of like red shirt sort of chorus line behind them, the engineering did seem like suspiciously empty of engineers.
But, even think about it. How many people were milling around there with Hemmer either? Hemmer was kind of in there by himself a lot.
True.
If I'm remembering it right, I don't remember.
It might be. I mean, it's been a while.
People in there.
I will have to. We'll have to be satisfied with these 2 seasons. Perhaps revisit them between now.
Well,
and
I mean, let's think about it. Here's something. The crew complement on the Enterprise D was something ridiculous.
It was like 1,000.
Yeah, right. And the Enterprise from the original series was 500.
No, it was like 300 something, I think.
Oh, 300 and something. You're right. And Pike's is only 200 and something.
So yeah, I mean,
less people on the ship.
There also there may be, that's like the main engineering chamber. Maybe I'm sure there are other stations that are like not visible from that main set.
Yeah.
So I mean, again, it doesn't, like, it's not like this is taking me out, but I was like, it is sort of odd that we don't get to see as many. We see more people in the bar than we do in engineering, which is understandable.
Very true. Yeah.
I can't argue with that logic. But listen, just I would say discuss. I have to say, just without going into any great detail, I thought this was a terrific second season. I don't feel like there was a sophomore slump, which sometimes happens with shows.
No.
I think we got to see a lot more of the characters. I still want to see more of Erica. I feel like we need a real Eric Ortega's centric episode. Like, she stepped up more, but even though, I'm Eric Ortegas and I fly the ship, that was cool, but we don't really I don't get a sense of where she came from, like who her family is, maybe why she joined Starfleet, what, we were dropped like little breadcrumbs, which we can extrapolate from, but I would like to know more about her.
So I think I'm going to make a prediction on what's going to happen in the first episode of season 3, whenever that happens. So I think Pike is going to withdraw from the. What did I do? Yeah, I know what I did. Okay, let's put my mouse is being. There we go. I think Pike is going to follow orders and withdraw from the demarcation line, but Scotty is going to get that gizmo that he brought back from the from the wreck of the shuttle on Stardiver. He's going to hook that up to the Enterprise, similar to how he hooked up a cloaking device once.
Yes.
Right.
And they are going to go back and rescue the crew.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
I think that's what's going to happen. I don't think he's actually going to go in guns blazing right now.
Because they are outnumbered. There's a large ship and like 3 or 4 smaller ships, like one of which is a pretty formidable, combat vessel.
Right.
So they are definitely outnumbered. I think you're right, Keith. I think that I'm sure there will be twists that we have not anticipated. But I do like the idea of Scotty and Pelia figuring out how to jury rig this improvised gizmo of Scotty's.
Right. And I bet you while they're doing this, so bear with me for a second. Once upon a time in a former life, I was a master control operator for a TV station. And there was this brand new TV station that was being started in the small town I was living in, and we were what's called a satellite station of the big one in the Twin Cities. So they brought down 2 engineers to basically wire this station up. Now I was just a flunky. My job was to make cables. They would say, here's cables. Start putting fittings on the end of these cables. So that's what I'm doing, and that's when I learned that you never get 2 engineers in the same room working on the same project because these 2 engineers fought the entire time I'm making cables. I'm just thinking, you tell me where to plug these things in, I'll plug them in there. But they're going, no, we should go to this machine, then that machine over there, then this machine, and then there. And then they're like, no, it's better if we do it in this order. And I'm thinking, just pick one. It sounds like both will work. But these 2 engineers, they could not agree on anything. And I'm predicting that you get Pelia and you get Scotty in the same engineering room and trying to hook up this device. They're going to argue about the best way to hook that device up.
Could be. And okay, so I'll throw a prediction out there for season 3. And that is, I think the way that Pelia is going to possibly exit the show is what we saw in that moment when she was so terrified of the Gorn. I think that you're going to get a point because she wanted to go, because she wanted to get out of Starfleet Academy and go out and have adventures. And it may be the Gorn is just a little too much adventure. This is a prediction, but it's sort of a qualified. I don't know if they're going to make this an arc for the next season, but is there going to be a war with the Gorn? Because it feels like Starfleet has been sort of like preparing for that because they have these special Gorn phasers and special Gorn tricorders, and they're nitrogen, frozen nitrogen, liquid nitrogen grenades. Yeah, they're grenades. Yeah.
So
that's true. We do.
The only reason that I hesitate to think that will occur, say in the classic DS9 fashion, is that they've made a real big point of saying that Strange New Worlds is very episodic.
Yeah.
And that while there may be some threads that carry through, you really could step into every episode and not lose your place. So I think it was hard to maintain that episodic quality and yet have them involved in a full-fledged war somewhere.
Yeah, I don't know, but it does feel like they're skirting very close to it.
They are,
but I think the mere fact that we have shown the Gorn in this episode in particular to be intelligent, that they're going to find a way to avoid war. They're going to come close. I think they're going to walk right up the edge. I think some of those liquid nitrogen grenades are going to go off because otherwise we've got Chekhov's grenades right there. So I mean,
exactly. Yeah,
those have to go off at some point.
Yeah.
I mean, it's also a question. They've got some Starfleet personnel with them that have, and they have their Gorn phasers and there's that stuff. So, I don't know what the Gorn, like, whether they beam them all into like a cell, and whether they take their equipment, like, because apparently you can do that sometimes with transporters, is like, isolate like gear and take it off a
Right.
person.
Right.
I can't remember, but we'll see what happens. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm curious to see what's going to go on, but we will have to wait, of course.
Yeah. Now,
Yes, we
speaking of which, we are going to take a little break between now and September when Lower Decks returns. Partially just because we've been doing this for over a year now, religiously every week, and we wanted to take a little break, but also because I have some gear that needs to be repaired, and I know it's not going to get fixed in a timely manner between episodes, so I need at least a couple weeks to make sure all my gear gets adjusted and tweaked and fixed. But we will be back for Lower Decks. Do you remember when that drops, you guys? Do you have that date?
Let me look it up. I believe.
I know it's September, but
I think it's in the very beginning. Season 4. Let's see.
7th. Eric Hutt says September 7th.
Yeah.
September 7th.
Yep.
There you go. Thank you, Eric. Thank you very much.
Is that a Thursday?
Yep, it's a Thursday, September 7th. So
7th, okay.
Yeah.
I knew it was like right in the beginning.
Craig Lubin says those Crate 32 items are not going to kill Gorn by
Nope,
themselves.
they're not.
That's true.
Yeah.
There was also just one little. There was a nice
Yeah.
moment between Mbenga and Ortegas when it's your birthday. Well, happy birthday in advance, Eric.
Yeah.
It'll be a special birthday episode for Eric Hutz.
Yeah, he'll make sure that he's watching us rather than celebrating
With his family,
birthday
like a
with-
chump.
like a
But there's a moment on the planet where Mbenga and Ortegas are talking about Chapel, and you get the impression they both think she may be dead, but they're
Right.
like, and he says, well, Christine was here. She tell us to, get busy, hop to it, get busy.
Yeah.
Because he's treating some patients there. And she says something. He says, "Oh, you do a pretty good, Christine." She says, "Oh, she does a better me." And
Right.
there's kind of it's like, because they're like, God, she went up the ship, and they're both feeling like they've lost it, but they don't want to quite admit it yet.
Yeah. I mean, they on the surface, the minute they come around the side towards that moon, that moon.
Yeah,
And they see the condition of the ship, it's like, I don't think there's anybody in there. I mean, it was pretty messed up. So, but at any rate. All right, gents. I'm gonna roll us out of here, but this was fun. What a great season. You're right. I thought it was a really good season. I can't think of a real dog out there.
Thank you for letting me be sitting in this bottom window for the entire.
Oh,
season.
hey Keith, thanks so much for being a part of the season. I thought it was great. We love having you on, and I thought that was fantastic. You always have insightful things to say and so much great energy. You're such a positive person. I love the fact that you're so positive. But even on a time travel episode, you were positive. So
that was tough. That was tough.
It did challenge you. You're right. At any rate, all right, guys. Hey, everybody, live long and prosper. Have a wonderful next few weeks. We will be back. Maybe some updated things for the show if I have time to get to them. And we will be seeing you for Lower Decks. And maybe we'll even do an episode ahead of it. I don't know. We'll have to talk about that, but maybe
we'll talk. Maybe do a
Lower Deck recap, or if there's a big trailer that comes out.
Yeah, maybe a trailer episode like we did for Strange New Worlds.
Yeah, that was kind of fun. So all right, guys. Hey, listen, have a great one, and we will see you very soon.
See you in September.